fire because it's what I do. Yeah. Excellent. All right. 3, 2, 1. I just go to hey chat room. Welcome to the show. How are you? Hi. I had a little audio issue this morning, and but let us not waste a single moment. I'm very lucky to have a guest on right out of the gate. The wonderful, the talented, the Bob CESCA. He is joining us right and now. How are you, sir? Good to see
Yeah,
you.
hey, I'm doing
Hi.
great, and yeah, and I'm glad today is Black T-shirt day. That
It
I
is
I dressed
absolutely.
appropriately, perfect.
I think
Black
it's
T-shirt
it's
Monday.
it's crucial. Yeah. So couple of things right out of the gate.
Mhm.
I have not had a chance to talk to you regarding Shark Week at all. And I feel like in some ways I'm letting the world down if we don't discuss in person the the hard fade that is Donald Trump right out of the gate.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've been following this for some time now, whether it's
Mhm.
his glitches during his rallies, and now
Mhm.
he's falling asleep. The thing that astonishes me most about this, Hal, is the complaining about it being cold in the courtroom. This is like,
Right.
doesn't this cut against everything that he stands for? Like, I'm this macho alpha guy, right? I'm
Right.
this tough guy, and but I'm
Well,
freezing as though I need a
long
shower
gone.
in court.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Long gone is the BDE that Kerry Lake was bragging about, right? The big dick
Right.
energy that he
Yeah.
supposedly has, and the fact that he is basically a human nuclear submarine, that he just is, powerful and hard and phallic and puts off his own heat, and the absurdity of it. And if is there anything more old person than my God, it's cold in here. Like it
Yeah, yeah.
right? Of all things.
He's Eddie Murphy's grandmother in that classic bit.
Right,
"Hey,
yeah.
baby, why is it so cold in
Why
here?
is it so
What
cold in here? Why
why you put
wow,
your dick in the sink?"
right, you nasty. You nasty. And he indeed is. So the the varying degrees of conversation about his court cases and the severity of them.
Mhm.
I would like your thoughts in sort of what I would say is happening is the deconstructing of the Trump myth in real
Yeah,
time.
yeah, right.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
rich,
his
Christian, conservative, good for national security. Like almost in that
mhm.
order, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah. I think his whole thing right now, Hal, is, going out to, what you refer to as his playpen in the parking garage, and
Hmm.
making sure that not the rest of us, but making sure that his own supporters are getting the right message, something that contravenes what's
Right.
happening in court, because he can't afford to lose a single one of them. So he needs them all in line. He needs them all towing the same bullshit that he talks about when
Right.
he's out there in the garage or out front or wherever he's doing his screaming about what's going on in court with the accordion hands and all the rest of it. He's just securing his base because he can't afford to lose a single one of them. If they start to listen to what's actually happening in court, the evidence that's being presented, the testimony that's being presented,
Right.
that will peel away, I think, enough to make a difference, especially when you're talking about close swing states like Michigan, Wisconsin, right now, Nevada. These are, contested states, at least if you believe the polls. And so if he loses any one of those red hats from the usual contingent of disciples,
Right.
he's totally screwed. So he needs to make sure they're all in line. Yeah.
Well, and that is always the gamble in a close election. I guess technically in any election is
Yeah.
that you're always weighing the greater electorate versus the base. How do you lock
Mhm.
down the base and not have enough of them drift because you're being too open to everybody else's thoughts? And this would be the bullshit about uncommitted in Minneapolis and in Michigan and places like that. That
Yeah.
that Biden's got to worry about this sort of drift from the core support of, by the way, Jill Stein voters that somehow like he's responsible for losing a third time or whatever. But
Yeah.
that conversation doesn't seem to come up about Trump, and I really do consider this like how many of of the soft base is he losing by trying to lock down the hard right? And I think abortion is probably the biggest issue. He is all over the fucking map on this
Mhm.
because he really doesn't know what his position should be for high electability in that crowd, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's incredible. It's an incredible thing to observe the reaction to, not just Dobbs, of course, but the reaction to this, Arizona law, which has
Mhm.
completely scrambled the deck. I mean, it's not only Donald Trump who's been flip-flopping all over the place on abortion, but Kerry Lake was doing it too. In fact, Kerry Lake's flip-flopped
Right.
3 times so far. Like, right after Dobbs, she's like, "Well, we've got this great law that's ready to go on the books. Yeah, we're all set with this great Arizona law that bans abortion.
Ugh.
Isn't this fantastic?" And then, of course, once it gets reinstated by the Arizona Supreme Court, she's like, "Oh my God, wait a second. Am I pro-choice? I think I'm pro-choice." So suddenly Kerry
Yeah.
Lake was pro-choice for about 5 minutes. And
Well,
now
and the
and now
irony
she's
that they're
back
all
to
talking
supporting
about
it. Yeah.
like it being about power, like Biden doesn't care about people, he cares about power. I'm like, I don't know. I gotta say, it sounds exactly like what you guys are doing. I don't think you
Yeah.
actually have a standard. And one of my favorite stories, by the way, and I'd love to show you this real quick if I could, is this is Carrie Lake and Donald Trump. This is from Raw Stories this morning. Trump shoves Carrie Lake out of Mar-a-Lago and frets she'll be electoral liability. This is a report from,
Wow.
I believe, the Daily Beast. But there are on two fronts. One is her election flip flop points to his abortion flip flop points to his abortion flip flop, and apparently there's something weird with Melania and his nunt and her in the same room. I don't know what the I it's just hideous. But apparently it's not just electoral stuff, but apparently, I guess Melania is afraid that Carrie Lake's putting out or something, and so it's causing like ew. Just first of all, ew, just
Yeah.
ew.
Yeah. I don't
But
get it.
it couldn't happen to nicer people. And
Mm.
what I'm enjoying right now, and I'm sure I could tell from your shitter feed. That's by the way, if you'll notice, Elon Musk was asking today what was a better name, Twitter or X,
Yeah.
and which I pronounce shitter in the Xi Jinping pronunciation of the letter X.
Right,
But
right.
also, I suggested him while you're calling it a drug, why not Molly or crack or Pervitin, frankly, because that's closer to its purpose and function currently. But
Yeah,
um,
why not call a spade a spade? Social media as
yes,
a drug, I think that makes perfect sense. It's completely addictive. Like,
absolutely,
can't
especially the
stop
drug
scrolling.
that Germans were on in World War II.
Yeah, exactly right.
So yeah, I guess in the Middle East it'd be called cot right now. But I can tell from how you're reacting in many ways, like the collapse of the Comer thing, like he's apparently looking to try and find a way to jettison the impeachment hearing so he can get away from it. They're all just,
Yeah,
I'm trying not to become overwhelmed with Schadenfreude is my point.
I
And
know.
I feel like you understand that more than almost anyone. Like the
Oh, I
struggle
really
is
do.
real.
Yeah, yeah. It really, really is. And the thing that that
Mhm.
I think is is
Mhm.
something that doesn't get a lot of conversation is the fact that I think what the Republican Party, the Trump Republican Party, is geared toward right now, and this kind of loops in everything, all the flip flops on abortion and everything that we've been seeing recently, is that the, it, it's an astonishing thing to observe because
Mhm.
they're really not about policy anymore. It's not about the abortion
Right.
policy. It's not about Dobbs. It's not about Arizona. It's exclusively about winning elections. I mean, the entire Trump
Right.
Republican Party is now geared towards centered around winning as many elections as possible. And the funny thing about that, and this is where the Schadenfreude comes in, it's not really working, is it? It's not
No,
really
it's the
sticking to the
exact
wall, as they
opposite.
say.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the point I'm trying to make about this, like this desperate attempt to lock down an ever crazier base
Mhm. Yeah.
is the problem in and of itself. They have created this sort of intellectual, philosophical, and psychosexual cul-de-sac of ideology that if you don't live on the block, you're Stepford wived out of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
And the more you commit, you can't half-ass those voters. You have to be all in on their QAnon bullshit. If you
Uh-huh.
even venture, and we have a bit of that on the Democratic side. We have the faux aggressives who, for whatever reason,
Oh yeah.
call themselves progressives, but hate progress above all else. Like anything that isn't, it's the TYT thing I always bring up, which is, if we can't have everything, nobody gets anything crowd.
Yeah.
We have a slice of
Exactly.
that,
Yeah.
but it's an increasingly small slice compared to like the MAGA and Freedom Caucus takeover
Mhm.
of the Republican Party.
Yeah. Yeah. Incredible. And right. So the entire Republican Party at this point uh
Mhm.
desperately needs some sort of retethering to reality. And I'm wondering what's going to cause that. This is something I've been thinking about quite a bit
Right.
lately, Al. What's going to, because we cannot continue on this road where half of the political debate, roughly give or take, I always get challenges on that. Is it really half, Bob? Well, if you look at the number of Trump voters as a percentage of all the voters
Yep.
in the presidential election last time, yeah, it's roughly half. And they're centered. Their their
Mhm.
their cheese has completely fallen off their cracker. They
Right.
don't know which is it. And my concern is whatever it is that snaps them back into reality. I'm wondering like how much spatter we're going to get on the rest of us from that event, that
No
thing that kind
question.
of shakes them out of their torpor. And because we can't continue on with every election being existential for democracy. This is not
Right.
something that we can deal with in perpetuity. One of the and talk about unspoken things. One of the things that doesn't get a whole lot of discussion, and this is even more buried in the conversation, which is the fact that I think the American system is more fragile than people give it credit for. I think
Right.
the American system can be badly destabilized with very little effort. Donald Trump almost did it in his first
Mhm.
time as president. And if he gets a second chance, untethered from having to run again, whether it's because of the 22nd Amendment or because he doesn't leave, he doesn't have to worry about getting more votes the next time around. So
Right.
he can destabilize things even further in an advancement of his own wealth and advancement of keeping his freedom from legal trouble and so on. So that is
Yeah.
something that I think needs to be reemphasized, especially now. And it's simply not. I think people believe that, well, it wasn't great in 2019. Let's have more of that again. And
Right.
I don't understand that.
No, first of all, I'm soundly, as many people know, as Steph calls me, happy clappy. I am convinced he's going to lose and lose hard. But the
Yeah.
question is more about that, like when the Republican Party restructures itself post Donald Trump, how much of that splatter do we get on us from that fucking like frontier surgery that they're going to be doing? Like, bite down on
Yeah.
this leather strap. This leg's turned all green and smelly.
Right.
Like they're not.
Mhm.
It's not going to be laser surgery. You're right. It's not going to be a
Yeah.
nip and tuck. It's going to be some major grotesque amputation, and it's not going to go well no matter what.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm all for arguing and voting across from somebody, because as long as somebody's voting, they're still engaged. They're
Hmm.
still committed to the process, right?
Yeah.
Of doing this. The minute they stop voting is the part where you have to worry about it, because that's
Hmm.
when they're like, they get kind of in the Unabomber mentality, like, I'm not
Oh, yeah.
part of this system. That the whole system is the other. And like I said, there's a spread of that across the intellectual and political spectrum, but it's
Hmm.
really weighted in the Marjorie Taylor Greene crowd. So like, she's about to check out too. Like I'm sure you've seen lately where she's talking like she's done with this. Now she said it before, but one day she might mean it, and what that will mean is not so much that she fucking tucks her tail and runs off back into her cave or whatever, but the people who supported her are going to disenfranchise, and that's when they get dangerous and start getting all Waco, Ruby Ridge
Yeah.
about shit. That's my concern on individual
Hmm.
level. They're never going to get another Jan 6 together, but
Yeah.
there is a strong chance that randos will do that. And by the way, I wanted to show you this real quick. This is what
Okay.
this was related to before. Carrie Lake falling out of favor with Trump because she's causing him problems with Melania.
Yeah,
I just,
and just I
I
think related
just
to all
had to.
this, yeah, I think connected into all of this is
Yeah.
what Christine Ohm wrote in her book about shooting that puppy,
Shooting a
and
dog, right.
yeah,
Revenge
and I
thing.
think
Yeah.
my concern about that, and I hate to be the guy who finds the super dark consequences of this beyond
Mhm.
just the event itself. I feel as though that lowered the bar so much. Like, what's going to happen next among people
Yeah,
like Kristi
how do you
Noem or Donald
bottom
Trump
that?
and Carrie Lake? Yeah,
That
how do you top that as far as awfulness goes?
right,
What's the
yeah,
shock factor going to be next that Michael Knowles and Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro are going to be screaming about, Dan Bongino and all the rest of it? What's
right.
going to be the next thing that will sink lower than murdering a dog for being too happy?
Oh, if Laura Trump had said this instead of Kristi Noem, we'd be
Yeah.
seeing videos of these dudes bragging about the dogs they've shot. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
honestly,
Yeah.
if it was a family member, if it was well within the cult, the only difference with it being Kristi Noem is that she's a governor of a state with fewer people than like like a suburb of Phoenix. But
Uh-huh.
which by the way has 2 senators. But don't get me started. The the other issue, and I like I said, I think we should call it like who's going to bottom that, because at a certain point that this is
Yeah.
just an ever moving floor with them. But I
Uh-huh.
do think that that's that part of alienating the average person on a scale that I don't think it's factored in, because you and I drink from the fire hose of the news all the time. A lot of our viewers do as well, and the little whispers of things about Biden's age and stuff have affected the generalized voter for a while. But it's starting to get taken over by Trump's bullshit about it's cold in here and she shot a dog and she
Yeah.
was the main consideration for his VP. They were teeing her the fuck up. And that was not us. Nobody went and dug that shit up. Right?
Mhm.
Nobody went up and like found out, interviewed a neighbor that she had shot a fucking dog. She
It
bragged
was in her
about it in her
book.
book,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And how many, they've got to be weighing this all the time. Like, how many of these psycho fuckhead maggot weirdos do I keep locked in, where I really start to lose the 70% of the party that's out there? Because I think
Mhm.
when they talk about 50-50 in the electorate and maggots and the Trump followers, you get a hard 36% of the Republican side of the electorate that is all in on him no matter what
Oh,
he
yeah.
does. That's
Yep.
about 36%. And these days, that's the only people they're calling. These are the people who vote every election and voted in the last couple, and so that's what's showing up in the polling right now. But they're not calling the people who half-ass it, and maybe they do, maybe they don't, Republicans,
Mhm.
which have all gone. And if they did go someplace, they went to Nikki Haley. I mean, she
Yeah,
won.
yeah.
I think that's the biggest political story of the last little bit, right? Was
Mhm.
that Biden got 93% in the final primary battle, and Trump got 84%
Yeah.
in his final
Incredible.
primary
Y
battle. Yeah,
Yeah, and completely unsurprising.
alone.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right, and, Donald Trump keeps underperforming the polls, and Joe Biden keeps performing the polls, and,
right.
that's a fact, and those are the numbers that I think that are far more accurate than checking out whatever Rasmussen put out or whatever the Fox News poll happens to be.
Right.
You look at those numbers plus the fundraising, and, the
Mhm.
advantage has to be to Joe Biden, and in fact, some of the people who have been following the polls quite closely and crunching the numbers and whose opinions I tend to trust, especially now when everything's flown off the rails with polling, is they're
Right.
all saying that much like what you're saying, that this is going to be a much bigger election for Joe Biden than he's being given credit for right now, or at least which is
Right.
being reflected in the polls. Which, yeah, and the one thing I find myself going through, Hal, as someone who's been following this for a long time, is I can't resist looking at the RCP average and seeing what those numbers are and going, oh shit, that
Mhm.
leaning too far back in your chair sensation. And I really am trying to break myself of reacting that way. But I
Mhm.
just can't help. If I look at the numbers and they're not looking good, my first reaction is to go, oh fuck. And then my second
Mhm.
reaction is to go, okay, it's going to be fine. There are actual numbers, real metrics you can apply to this election right now that
Right.
completely supersede whatever the polls are saying. And by the way, there are some accurate polls there. You can find some gems
Yeah.
in the mix. You just
Right.
have to look for them.
And when you
Yeah.
find them, he's at least a point ahead above the margin of error. It's 5 or 6%.
Yeah.
That is a reasonable, based on and specific to states. It's
Uh,
reasonable in that's a reflection of what the actual polls are. The danger of, and by the way, the polls are going to tick closer and closer, and Biden will overtake him leading up. It benefits us as far as turnout goes, for people to think he's losing in this, because they're not going to like our side of the aisle is not going to disengage.
Yeah.
There is a certain fear on the Republican side that if they think he's going to coast to it, they won't show up because they already have a predilection not to vote. He's been talking them out of it for
Hmm.
6 fucking years. It's the weirdest part of like the Trump get out the vote campaign is that you can't trust voting. Don't early vote. If you're going to vote, vote on the day. If something happens while you're,
Yeah.
at work or anywhere else, or you have a family emergency, God forbid, or something like that, that vote is erased. And there's enough people in this country that if you had to pin them down on one particular day, you would lose a significant amount of participation, no matter
Hmm.
what that day is. If you're like, hey, we're moving it to August 3rd this year, that on August 3rd, there's a significant number of people who would have some shit to do that would interfere with whatever that was. Always. I mean,
Yeah.
it's why local elections don't do it, because people don't set the time aside, and bosses don't necessarily give time like they're supposed to people to take the day off and shit like that. That's I mean, that's why the turnout is fucking muted so
Hmm.
much in these special elections and the like. He's effectively turning his side of the aisle into a special election on the regular day.
Yeah.
It's moronic.
Yeah. And by
Yeah,
the way, he continues to say, don't worry about votes. We've got all the votes we need, which is just
right.
astonishing. What does he see that it's not going to matter if turnout is depressed? I mean,
Right.
this election's going to be entirely about turnout. I mean, that's going to decide who wins this thing. And he's telling his people, I don't worry about it. We
Yeah.
got this. You know what? I would much rather be us looking at negative polls than them looking at negative, or
Oh,
however this
absolutely.
plays out. I would much rather, because what we've seen in the past is the left tends to get a little complacent when it comes to positive polls. I mean, at this point in time in 2016, in April of 2016, there was a CNN ORC poll that came out that
Right.
had Hillary Clinton up 13 points. I think the RCP average had Hillary Clinton, it was something like plus 8.5 right
Right.
on this day in 2016. And we kind of saw how that ended up working out. Granted, she won the popular vote. So when you connect the national polls to the popular vote, it was a little bit closer than what the Electoral College results indicated. But still, there was definitely an underperformance from Hillary Clinton. And some of
Right.
that had to do with Jill Stein voters in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And then some of that had to do with just people saying, oh, you know what? I just can't vote for her. I can't. So I'm just
Right.
not going to show up or whatever. And how bad could Trump possibly be anyway? He's just a
Right.
celebrity apprentice guy. And so I think that led to the results that we ended up seeing in that election,
Yep.
which I don't think is going to happen. I think by now, the
Nope.
difference between 2016 and now is we all know what a Donald Trump presidency is going to
Yeah.
be like. Even people who
He's
are only
not an unknown.
casually
He's not an
observing.
unknown entity this time
Yeah,
around. You have no
that's right.
fucking excuse, and that's why 2020 was so definitive. Is
Uh,
because he was no longer an unknown entity. He was,
yeah.
and now we're like, okay, this is how this guy will be, and it's fucking awful. And a good
Mhm.
portion of independents are like, all right, I was willing to roll the dice, and maybe one day we'll have a Mark Cuban or a Zuckerberg or somebody like that that's a uber billionaire, and we trust them to run shit because they ran their business and they were nice to workers and they had to defend their decisions to shareholders, shit like
Yeah.
that, which is a little more akin to how a democracy would be run compared to especially a family business handed down from father to son. And
Mhm.
as Trump just shit the bed with his father's wealth for 4 fucking decades. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That's
Yeah.
the other thing. Like, it's one thing to go, we need a businessman. You're like, yeah, maybe. But if we did, it wouldn't be somebody who inherited it from his father and then turned a company that built shit into a labeling company, effectively just
Yeah.
like a branding entity in that regard. There is an article that, like, the new panic attack, which I gotta say I'm fucking enjoying. From this is Charlie Kirk posted this, and I was trying to bring the article up on screen so that I could show this to you. But do you know about Joe Biden's executive order 14019? It's Zuckerbucks times 1,000. Um, The EO140119 turns the $6 trillion federal government with its 600 separate agencies into a get out the vote machine for his campaign. This is totally illegal and a multi-trillion-dollar advantage for Joe Biden ahead of November. This needs to be stopped in the court. It's currently being challenged in Pennsylvania in what people connected to the case are telling me is the most important election integrity lawsuit in the country. SCOTUS might hear the case. It could be stopped by Congress too if Republicans in Congress ever actually force concessions from Biden instead of just surrendering. Joe Biden and his campaign are increasingly confident they will win despite bad polling and collapsing approval numbers. Maybe this is why, if we lose in November, that could very well be because of this. Now, what is he talking about? Okay, so there's a court case in Pennsylvania challenging what they are calling Biden bucks around, because of Zucker bucks paying for election boxes or whatever. Okay. So
Yeah.
here's what Biden did. Biden signed Executive Order 14019, which commands the federal government to basically promote access to voting. Dear fucking God. It just makes sure that working with state and, like local governments and counties and that kind of stuff, make sure you need money for election, for machines, for counters, for fucking, I don't know, lunch for your poll
Of
workers,
course.
whatever the
Yeah.
fuck,
Yeah.
right? Which is what they hated Zuckerberg for doing, which is why they're, running around doing this anti-Jew Zuckerbucks thing that fucking Mike Pillow's been doing. But this is very telling to me that they are panicking that the idea of getting out the vote in and of itself is enough to make them think this is him like rigging the election. The more people that can vote, the fewer people are going to vote for us. That's it.
That's right. Yeah, yeah. Because they Charlie Kirk, for all his dumb
Oh,
fuckery,
yeah.
seems to understand that the more people who end up voting, the worse off Republicans end up doing. And that is tried and true. That is, you can take that to the bank every single election. If voter turnout is high, Democrats invariably do better. So consequently, you've got to suppress voter turnout. You've got to
Right.
suppress voter registration. You have to make it more difficult for people to vote. We can do the long list of voter ID and all the things. And I
Right.
always think about this too in terms of our elections. You got Joe Biden careening toward election day, and he's got the big Ernest Hemingway fish latched to his boat. And we're trying to get to election day with as minimal amounts of fish being bitten away by sharks. You know what I mean? Like the old man in the sea metaphor. I think it's so good.
That's
And you
right.
got all these factors, whether it's voter ID, whether it's removing black people from voter rolls, on
Yeah.
down the line of things that take chunks out of that fish before we get it to shore. And the idea is to minimize that as much as possible so that we can make it to November with a fully intact, gigantic fish.
I like
So,
it. I like the analogy.
yeah,
I'm with you. You didn't have to sell me on it at all. I followed you through. As a matter of fact, and I think it's very telling. Interestingly enough, as they try to purge names from the from voter rolls because of overlap. Let's say there's a lot of Juan
yeah,
Gonzalez's or those kind of names, but there's a ton of John Smiths that they keep, and so that's very telling. This also the Charlie Kirk thing is not new at all. As people
yeah.
who know the Paul Weyrich quote, which
Oh, yeah.
if you're not, this is a guy, and Ronald Reagan was sitting in the audience of this particular quote, right?
Yeah.
Which see if I can get it to play and people hear
Now,
it.
many of our Christians have what I call the goo-goo syndrome. Good government. They want everybody to vote. I don't want everybody to vote. Elections are not won by a majority of people. They never have been from the beginning of our country, and they are not now. As a matter of fact, our leverage in the elections, quite candidly, goes up as the voting populace goes down.
That's right.
There it is.
So that's the whole fucking game with them. That the fewer people vote, the easier it is for you to leverage your get out the vote from, whatever fear base you're using, because you panic the shit out of your voters, and then you make it really hard for even just average voters. Because again, there's an ROI on this, because by exciting your voters, you can panic others. That would be the abortion issue right now. By giving them Roe, you effectively woke up the sleeping lion of the woman's vote in this
Yeah.
country, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, good.
Oh, yeah. I was going to say, much like a Rachel Maddow A block, all of these things connect together. And so, for example,
Yeah,
this particular issue connects to immigration, and Republicans are terrified of brown people coming over the border and eventually setting up citizenship through some path that way. And voting for Democrats as a consequence, coming into the country with the support of the Democratic Party and then voting for Democrats. They're imagining this as part of some form of long-term Democratic electoral strategy. Like, we're bringing all the brown people in because we want to win more elections. And so consequently, they're pushing back on immigration, not just because it works for their racist base, but also because they're concerned about the electoral aspect of this, and the fact that the Republican Party could become even more of a minority party, even more of just a permanent opposition party as the demographics change. And so you can connect that voter turnout issue, voter ID, the Paul Weyrich quote, and all of it directly to immigration as well. Because one of the things the Republicans are is they're cynical enough to project their ill intent onto the Democrats. Okay, so if we're doing these things to reduce turnout, they're pulling the same kind of shenanigans to increase turnout by whatever means they possibly can. So in addition to making sure turnout is low, we also have to make sure that the Democratic Party is unable to, and this applies directly to what Charlie Kirk is raving about with Facebook, making sure that they can no longer expand voter rolls. And so it's a two-front war for the Republicans.
And on a philosophical level, I think you have to believe everybody cheats to be a successful cheater. To be consistent as a cheater yourself, you have to believe the whole thing is rigged, the world is set up against you, because that excuses you to do whatever the fuck you need to do, or at least gives you an out. And what I would call is like sort of like Reese in the Terminator movie stealing shoes. There's an element of, and I think I've always you probably have enjoyed this as much as I have in movies, where a guy on the run who's innocent, or whether it be Harrison Ford in The Fugitive, or Reese when he first arrives and the cops are chasing him, and he steals that really kick-ass long coat.
I was just gonna say, and the shoes. I wanted those fucking shoes.
Yeah, and the way he picked them just by holding them to the bottom of his foot, like as a kid, I was like, you could do that shit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it does work.
And by the way, where is the store? Where can I get those goddamn sneakers? They're incredible.
Yeah, you couldn't find them. Yeah, there was, and the pre-distressed long coat. Where the fuck was that thing? So, but the point being, and the fact that, by the way, whatever infection he must have given Sarah Connors from getting those pants from that homeless dude is another conversation entirely. Bless his heart. I think the scar on John Connors' face was literally left over from a syphilitic infection that he picked up in an alleyway.
The parasites,
gnarly. So, but point being is that there's a certain freedom you feel in those situations. That person is completely justified because they are innocent and on the run. They can steal, they can deceive, they can, manipulate because their goal is good and the system is set up against them, right? We recognize that as kind of a moral okayness. In the same way, by the way, that the Western version of a suicide bomber is you came to me. There's a difference in, how we view suicide bombers in our art and in our morals in that regard. Is that the idea that you would take a vest of bombs and walk into a market and blow yourself up is terrible and anathema to us. But if you're in a air duct and the aliens are coming to you, and you've run out of gun like ammo, you can blow yourself up with them, and it's considered honorable, right? There's that variance. So we allowed for this kind of like, you can do things that structurally standing on their own are immoral if the system is leveraged against you. And so the mythology of a system leveraged against you is used often by the shittiest people among us to create this faux elites, Illuminati, deep state bullshit storyline, because it excuses them from having to stand by their shit. It
Yeah.
excuses them from the immorality of what they're doing. I'm trying to stop, a rigged election, so I've got to stop all these people from voting,
Hmm.
right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This is a part of Republican strategy that we can see
Mhm.
happening in real time. I mean,
Right.
if Republican policies fail, as they did during Donald Trump's term,
As they
during George
always
W.
do.
Bush's 2 terms, as they always do. The solution to that, the way the Republicans invariably wiggle out of those disasters, is that, well, it was Democrats' fault. If some
Mhm.
state goes haywire and goes bankrupt, what Donald Trump will say is, well, the Democratic governor or the Democratic mayors of these cities, they're to blame. That's why.
Right.
It's not Republican policy nationally. It's not Republican policy statewide. It's just, oh, it's those Democrats in the cities that are causing all the problems.
Right.
They're the ones causing all the crime and homelessness and all the rest of it. It has nothing to do with trickle down or any of these zombie policies that the Republicans keep pushing on the American people without changing them
Right.
whatsoever to, to cater to the times or to whatever the crisis happens to be. It's just like, okay, we're going to throw the same shit against the wall, and whatever doesn't stick, well, that's the Democrats' fault, and we'll just blame them. And the worst part about that is there are millions of gullible suckers out there who go, yeah, that's
Mhm.
right, it is the Democrats' fault for reasons that I can't explain and we'll
Right. I
never be
cannot
able to explain.
articulate, or you have to
Yeah.
go, somebody else who's in line at the fucking Trump rally, come explain to this asshole why I think what I think, which
Yeah,
you see
right.
all the fucking time.
Yeah.
I mean, I even saw it with like this, that they had a obviously pro Hamas professor at one of these places who did the exact same thing. And it's almost like this weird knee jerk reaction, which is
Mhm.
repeat your jargon up to a certain point, and then if anybody's capable of challenging you past the jargon, call in an airstrike from around you, like bring in,
Yeah.
right, like somebody else explain to me why tell him why I believe what I believe. Like, okay, fuckhead, if you can't articulate it, maybe revisit, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I saw like a Good Liars interview, and it's interesting watching those guys and their kind of evolution from like kind of joking about this stuff to occasionally in their interviews going, fuck is the matter with you with some of these people? Like where you can tell their patience is wearing
Yeah.
thin with how
Klepper
dumb these
too, yeah.
motherfuckers. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And at one point, one of them was talking to this guy and he's like, well, name, anything about that Joe Biden has done, the policies, the actual written policies,
Mhm.
what has he done? What bills has he passed that you don't like, that you disapprove of? And the guy was like, where do you start? And he's like, well, I don't know, wherever, any of them. And he's like, everything. Like, I mean, honestly, infrastructure, what, the CHIPS Act, the Rescue Pact, what was
Mhm.
it about it that did? And the guy was literally like, you just saw this immediate blank stare, like panic of like, I don't even know what you just mentioned means. And he
Yeah.
turns behind him and he goes, somebody want to help me out with this? I'm like, you motherfuckers are having to like crowdsource what you think Biden's doing wrong while you're standing in line and for a Trump rally right after they had just admitted that, like, well, I don't like everything he does, but we need a good strong leader. And obviously, and they go, so you the tax guy, you didn't like that? No, I mean, I was like, I think that should have been but still, it's too important. But like they
Mhm.
listed 3 things that he did specifically that were fucked up, including the vaccine, because these assholes are assholes. They could list 3 things that Trump did they hated, but they were still with him. They couldn't
Mhm.
list a single fucking thing that Biden did that they disliked. And yet they're like livid at his existence. It's amazing.
Yeah, yeah. It's because they're being indoctrinated and just
Right.
completely hammered 24/7 with disinformation and propaganda to say, "Oh yeah, Joe Biden's terrible because things." And can't you just see? Just look
Right.
at. I mean, that's what Donald Trump says all the time. I'm sure you're familiar. Oh, just look at this. Look at that. Look
Yeah.
at. He's always just saying, look at things, and it's just
Yeah.
okay. Yeah, but see, that's
It's
why.
all around you. It's all
Yeah.
like that's the idea. It's kind of like Comer's evidence. They were up to here in fucking evidence. The evidence
Mhm.
is everywhere. Look at with your own eyes. The evidence is right there. Like, okay, first of all, information is not evidence, asshole.
Yeah.
And I need a crime before a smoking gun is evidence of a crime. Because for all I know, you're standing at a fucking shooting range, on a
Yeah.
lot of smoking guns are at the shooting range, fuckhead. So
Mm,
explain to me what the crime is. It's not evidence until you have that, and they
yeah.
never could. And that's the. I guess the big question is Donald Trump convicted before or after the impeachment collapses entirely? We're almost like in a greyhound race
Hmm.
for Comer to just kind of quietly just shelve the right the impeachment thing, or Trump
Yeah.
gets convicted in this situation. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mhm. Yeah,
So
yeah, it's an entire it's the weirdest goddamn year in politics, and it's only
it's
gonna get
so
weirder
odd.
as time goes on. The trash compactor between the legal jeopardy for Donald Trump and the election happening itself. We've never experienced this before. I mean, everything that we're looking at right now is unprecedented, and it's a miracle that Donald Trump is still doing as well as he's doing, fundraising as much as he is, which is still not a lot, but still, that's the thing. Going back to the polls, the thing that drives me crazy is even if you were to drop 10 points off of Donald Trump's numbers, it's still like, well, what the hell? I mean, I get emails every day from people saying, Bob, what's going on? How is he still doing so
Yeah.
well? Even if you were to drop 20 points, how has he still got 35% of the people after he murdered 400,000 Americans in his final 10 months in office?
Right.
400,000, most of them his own supporters who were
Right.
dumb enough to believe what he said about COVID and liberate Michigan and not wearing masks and doing whatever the fuck you want. It's an incredible, incredible time that we live in
Well,
right now.
right. Well, I mean, I guess it boils down to how convincing is the fear they have put in you, that
Yeah.
you how much will you put up with? And to me, it boils down to kind of like Negan in The Walking Dead. Like there
Mhm.
was this idea that this dude had a rape harem. This
Yeah.
storyline around the Negan character is some of the most vicious and grotesque, villainy you could come up with. That bat he carried with the barbed wire on it, he would,
Mhm.
if they came across a new group of people, he would kill one of them just to keep the rest of them in line. Didn't matter who they were. Didn't matter if they brought food and they were like, "Hey, we would like to join your group. We brought a bunch of food." Is it no? He'd kill one of them just so they'd know who's boss. So let's start there. Secondly, he would take the women that he found attractive and keep them on the third floor of this old factory, and he would have sex with them and cut their boyfriends and their husbands or whatever into working. And if they didn't do it, they would be like chained up in a zombie pen, right, and killed, right.
Mhm.
And never mind the rehab bullshit of this storyline of this guy after the fact, which is when I think the Dead lost its script entirely. But the psychology of it that it spoke to in the comic books and in that situation, that people would put up with that.
Yeah.
The reason they would do that is because the threat outside was so insane,
Mhm.
flesh-eating zombies and by the thousands, that they would put up with that shit in exchange for not having to face that huge gigantic force outside. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's sort of like you just explained Bill Barr's position on Donald Trump. Like, you know
Right.
what? I hate I hate Donald Trump. He was a terrible president. I saw all kinds of examples of his fuckery while he was in office. But you know what? The progressive agenda is the real threat.
Is terror, yeah,
That's Bill Barr's
is a
entire
zombie
thing.
horde. Right. And
That's right.
and they're at the gates.
Mm,
That is the essence of it, that I think they view him as kind of like and again, all deference to pit bulls, this is about the kind of appearance of the idea, is that I don't care if he shakes the baby. I just am so scared of anybody who comes into the yard that I just want the most vicious,
yeah,
maltrained dog I can possibly have, because I'm that afraid. The
yeah.
problem with it is that you gotta eventually shit or get off the pot in that ideology, don't you? You have to
Mhm.
confront your fear and
Yeah.
go, yes, they are monsters and the war must begin. Or you've got to recognize you were full of shit and slink back and just become kind of a barking racist at the end of the bar, don't you? I mean,
Yeah.
that seems to be where they're going.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Well, I mean, enough never Trumpers figured it out. They figure, oh, hey, you
right.
know what? We got to bury our pride. We've
That's
got
what
to
that is. Right.
seem like we're backpedaling, which we are, but we can't bring ourselves to morally, ethically, politically support this motherfucker, and so
Hmm.
therefore we're going to piss off a lot of people by abandoning the Republican Party entirely. And so that's why I have a hard time condemning the Never Trumpers. I have a hard time like finger
Right.
wagging them and saying, well, George W. Bush and you supported, but they're making a move, I think, which is, I believe, whether it's authentic or not, I believe it's a noble one. And so I
Right.
think they deserve the latitude to be able to make that evolution in public, which
Yes.
is an insane thing to do these days.
Especially with maggots threatening people's lives. I mean, the level of
Yeah.
death threats that they get. I mean, just judges who are trying to be balanced. Eileen Cannon gets death
Mhm.
threats from maggots for not being sufficiently,
Yeah.
observant of his holiness. And so the Lincoln Project guys and all this stuff. I mean, they've got a target on their back, and there's enough of these fucking lunatics out there to make a difference. Is that one of the cups you use to bash in the head of a? I'm just
Yeah, that's blood. That's
right.
what I do. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Just anyways. So I was, they get a little
Someone
ugly
comes to
and
the door.
whack. Right.
The Amazon guy comes by, knocks on the door. I got
Have you
your
thought
package.
about voting for
Wham!
Donald Trump?
Yeah.
Ow! But no, I'm kidding. Kidding. All comedy. But the point being is that there's a real level of violence that's possible, non-joke violence from these motherfuckers. That when
Mhm.
the Lincoln Project guys come out, they are painting a target on themselves in a
Yeah.
time that is very different than people coming out and going, I was a Reagan conservative, but I think Clinton creating, a situation where we had a surplus is a great thing. And therefore I'm a Clinton Democrat, even after being that. Like you could get castigated for it. People might shit on you. You might
Mhm.
catch a side eye glance at a fucking Heritage Foundation dinner party, but you weren't going to get killed. You weren't going to get your
Yeah.
life threatened or your children doxxed and shit like that. And so they do. So I think you're right that there is a genuine, like, there's like a real honor to them doing it right now. Even if they're not
Mhm.
all in on what we believe, that's not the point. And again,
Yeah.
they're engaged as voters, right? So
Yeah.
that's fingers crossed, there's more of those coming. And I really do think there is. I think you're going to see what were like Obama voters from the Bush years who transferred over showing up for Joe Biden in numbers that I don't think they've even factored in.
Yeah, yeah, and I don't
Yeah,
think the MAGA movement is gonna last. I think there's a shelf life on it, and I
right.
believe it's smart for people like Liz Cheney and some of the others to start to coalesce as a unit to possibly produce the future Republican Party, whatever replaces maybe still called the Republican Party, maybe called something else, but
Right.
there is going to be something once the MAGA
Wigs
movement.
2, The Reckoning.
Yeah, once they tire themselves out, which I think
Right.
eventually will. They'll get exhausted with having to have that fever pitch 24/7, and
Right.
they'll decide, "Hey, you know what? Maybe we should figure something else out." I hope that, because that's the only, going back to what I was saying about some sort of calamity happening to shake them out of their torpor or their whatever mental derangement they're
Mhm.
in right now. Uh, b- it either needs to be that, or it needs to be something that's relatively normal as far as a party realignment, which we've seen many times in the past. Certainly, the Whigs turning into the Republican Party was along those lines, and
Right.
yeah, so yeah, that'll.
I have a lot of faith in this year, and I do think part of it is because they've dug a hole so deep that the idea of getting out of it is getting increasingly hard for them. When Kellyanne Conway is saying Trump is expanding his core base, which is such a dodgy way of saying we're reinforcing maggot world and we don't need everybody else. And what we'll do is we'll hope that our hardcore supporters will be so fucking nuts they'll scare people away from polling places. Is really what, and it's not going to work because there's not enough of them. I don't care what and none of them are going to show up and just wave guns at anybody they don't recognize in their neighborhood, and get away with that either. And two stories like that, and it folds so badly. That's just the reality of it. I don't see them having an out. It's not happening. So, by the way, I want to remind everybody, Bob Seska show. It's bobseska.com. And what's your schedule these days? I always have a hard time keeping track of everybody's. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. Yeah. Excellent. Fantastic. Right. Especially those of us that work odd hours late at night and the like. So yeah, and the link is in. Thanks Mark P for putting that in there in the chat room as well. And I appreciate it, brother. I enjoy reading your shitter feed more than almost anybody else's because I I can look at the clip or whatever you're referencing, and even in your most obscure pop culture references, I get exactly where I know where you're going. I know exactly where you're going. Wait, why did right? Hold on. Hold on. We lost your audio for some reason, like 1 second. That was so odd. Like it just dropped in there. Yeah, I'll fix it. Either way, yeah, I don't see it in there. It's very strange. I'll fix it. Fear not. But thanks so much, Bob. We'll see you again soon. And I got Tara hanging in the wings, and I'll bring her in, and hopefully we'll be able to hear her, and it won't just be crazy. So, anyways, thank you, brother. Bob CESCA Show, everybody. BobCESCA.com. Awesome. There you go. Cheers. Okay, off he goes. And now, let me see if I can copy this link and see if that was an issue. Can you say something, Tara, so I can hear you? Oh, excellent. I can see and hear you, but I noticed that the audio is not coming out of, for whatever reason, the browser in this situation. So that might be an issue. So give me 1 second. I'm going to reload my page. Nope, it's not you. I'm going to reload my page on my side. Hopefully it'll fix it because it's just being wonky and quirky. There we go. Checking this and seeing if we can pop her back in and check for me if you could. Yeah. Okay. So I can definitely hear you, but they can't. So let me do one thing real quick, and I will solve it another way because it's what I do. Aw, I'm working on it. Maxine is in the background, everybody. So I'm fixing this real quick as we go. She'll be back. Don't No, but she'll be back. She will be back. Don't worry about it. Okay, so we'll throw this in here. Okay, paste this. Control audio and OBS. Say okay. Yes, there. And then check for me there and see if we can get something. Can you hear me? Okay, great. And do I? The question is, do I hear you? Let me see if I move you over here and get you in here and see if it works or whatever. And we'll just play it as we go. There you are.
There he is.
Yay! And so I know the chat room
Hal, can you hear me?
I can. You can hear me.
Can you
Everybody
also
hear you as
center
well.
me a little bit better?
Yes, I will.
Is
Give me a second. I can't do I solve all the problems at once. There she is. Look how pretty.
Come on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
There she is. So, hi, welcome.
Hi.
Excellent. Fixed it. You know, it's crazy go nuts, this funky world we live in with the,
Technology,
yeah. And I
What
gotta
a
say
country.
we're leading into, I guess, week 2.5 of the Trump trial. And I gotta say I'm enjoying it more and more.
Greatest show on earth.
Uh-huh.
It's to me, it's so astonishing that, and
Mhm.
it's like I don't know if you watched the White House Correspondents' Dinner on Saturday,
Yes,
but I
I
did,
did.
and it was okay. And so it's like what Colin Jost said was like he's
Mhm.
farting himself awake through this criminal trial, and he owes $500 million in the fraud and all of this. He's like, and the race is tied.
Yeah.
So it's the again reiterating the abnormality of what we're looking at right now. I think is really important. He should not be a candidate for any office in this country or ever again for any reason because he's out on bail. He was arrested 4 times last year. He's sitting
Right.
in a criminal trial right now. Right
Yep.
now. Joe Biden can go anywhere. Donald Trump can only go to court. He gets the weekends off, right? And he gets Wednesdays, right? They get
Right.
Wednesdays off for some reason. So he can go golf on Wednesdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, or go yell at a campaign or some rally or something. But the fact that the Republican Party has accepted this,
Right.
this is just what we're doing. We're just doing this. We're just backing this adjudicated rapist criminal fraud. Caught on tape committing election interference. It's fine. It's fine. No, he's our guy. He's totally our
Yeah.
guy.
What's not to
Everything
like?
about this is fine. If a Democrat tried any of this, though, we'd be screaming bloody murder, but it's fine. It's fine. We're the party, we're the pro-life party, but I'll be right back because I have to kill a puppy and throw its body into a gravel pit. What?
Oh, and a goat. By the way, I
And
would
a
like to
goat.
remind everyone that the goat was
Horses.
killed just at random as well. She shot apparently a puppy and a goat at the same time. Like she got all of her random unnecessary animal killing done. You know, she's nothing if not
Which
efficient.
other animals aren't serving a purpose on this property?
And
So,
3
and she
horses,
also,
right?
and 3 horses, and then she's trying to justify it by saying it's something that she did 20 years ago. So, you killed a puppy. There's no coming back from killing a puppy. I
Hey,
really,
excuse me. That would be 2004. Stop acting like it was like you were Amish down on the farm in the 50s, and
right.
you know, and you're in the middle of the Dust Bowl, and you don't have enough provisions to keep animals alive. This was 2004, you dizzy fuck. Like it's 20 years ago.
God,
Shut the
this
fuck
is
up.
goes beyond a quirky anecdote from your past, lady.
Yeah.
It's just, it's fucking crazy. And it's what she is doing. I mean, I wonder if she had her ghostwriter and editor collaborate to include that anecdote because she knows Trump hates dogs. And
Mhm.
she's trying so hard. She's so thirsty to be his VP
Right.
choice, which
Wow.
is
That
again
you think she
totally
put that in there
abnormal.
just to like suck up to Trump and his hatred of dogs?
Honestly don't know. This pro-life party
Yeah.
is actually a death cult. So the more
The
murder
irony.
that they can show. So I mean, if you just take a casual tally of what we know, okay, Christy No murders puppies and goats and horses. Marjorie Taylor Greene held a
Mhm.
contest on her website for someone to go shoot pigs with her from a helicopter. And
Right.
then she alluded to the fact that it would be similar to shooting Democrats because Democrats are pigs. So that was special. Matt Gaetz has raped more than one teenager.
Mhm.
Jim Jordan looked the other way when student athletes were being raped at Ohio
Allegedly.
State.
But yes.
Sure. Mike Huckabee's son is a dog murderer. The Trump sons
Mhm.
love to go hunt and kill game and love to pose with dead lions and dead elephants.
Yeah. By
They
the way,
love death.
staked animals that are basically either like the only food in the area is one particular place, so they basically, you know, set up a food desert literally and then place a thing of food there to lure them in so they can be shot while they're getting their one meal. You know, real
Egregious and
hunting.
most pathetic. I mean,
Ah,
it's
fucking
just
gross.
over and over they prove to be a death cult, not a pro-life party. If you're pro-life, you want all life to thrive.
Sure.
No, you don't. No, you don't, you fucking hypocrites. No, you don't. Or Trumpocrats, as I like to say. But I mean, what 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 there is not one Republican where you can go, look at this example of humanity. We're just so
Right.
proud. We're just so proud. There is not
And
one.
if there is one, the Republicans themselves, I'm going to center you a little bit better and bring up if there is one, the Republicans will turn on that person.
Like Adam Kinzinger, who again, I
Right.
mean, there's no such thing as an unflawed Republican. I'm not going to agree with Adam Kinzinger, and I'm not going to agree
Right.
with Liz Cheney on most of
Right.
what they believe because they're still Republicans and they still lean conservative. And even though they
Yeah.
did the right thing, you can do the right thing and still also then turn around and do the wrong thing, especially, hi, Bill Barr, I see you.
Sure.
And
Mhm.
so, everybody who has said with one side of their mouths, Trump is terrible. Oh, but if he's our candidate, I'm going to vote for him. You know, all of that.
Uh-huh.
So now I forgot what my original point was. Oh, the death
Oh,
cult. They just
right.
all of them. And so today there's a good on MSNBC. I forgot her name, but there's a Republican strategist who wrote a thing about Chris Christie and
Mhm.
how Chris Christie really just he shot himself in the foot with
Sure.
who he is and how embittered he is about not being the candidate and how if he keeps talking smack, he's going to leech votes from Biden and he's not going to vote for Biden, but he also doesn't want anything to happen that would take votes away from Biden. And he doesn't want to support RFK, but he's worried. Like, he's just all over the map. And so
Right.
she was just talking about how he can't choose a lane and he can't He can't get over the fact that he's not the candidate. It's like, well, you all did it
Right.
wrong. You did
Uh-huh.
it wrong. You didn't back the non-MAGA candidate. Do you want your party? You and I have talked about this many times on your show. If you want the Republican Party to actually exist
Yeah.
after the 2024 election, you're going to find somebody who's not Trumpy. You're
Mhm.
going to have to find someone who's not MAGA and really lift them up and put them at the forefront of the party and say, this is the example. We are someone who's sort of Romney-esque, but not Romney, someone who's not
Right.
MAGA, someone who's, there's got to be a Republican who's got not a crazy stance on abortion, not,
I
like, remember before 2016, there were still Republicans who could be moderate, and there were still Republicans who could have intellectual political discourse and could have debates without being name calling or life threatening.
yeah.
I know that they still exist. They're just scared of Trump tweets or whatever. Y'all need to stop being afraid of mean
I would
tweets, which
argue.
is
I would argue it's not. At this, there used to be a period where they were afraid of the mean tweets because it could cost them on an electoral level. Now they're afraid of his nutty fucking followers endangering their lives. I mean, like I was talking about with Bob CESCA about this very thing, was the idea that these there's a genuine danger for the Lincoln Project, anti-Trumpers in this regard. And it's one of the reasons why more people don't come out against this dickhead, is because
so
it
dumb.
shouldn't be, but you're putting your life on the line. You don't
Which
know
is
which rando fuckhead from his camp is gonna take a poke at you.
that is
It
true.
is it's a serious concern, the way it was never before. There was never a point where if you turned on Romney or were like, I'm voting for Obama because I don't like this dude and he's full of shit, or I don't like Mormons.
Yeah, the
or anything like
Mormons
that.
aren't gonna threaten
Right.
to rape and murder you. So,
Exactly. Right. None of
they're
them were
just
gonna.
not.
Yeah. Right. And
None of them
openly do
ever
so,
called.
or
No, I mean,
send you a picture of your kid going to elementary school. Right.
nope, I've said this before. Nobody tried any kind of shitty intimidation tactics from the Romney campaign in 2012 because that's not what politics was in 2012. And
Right.
Donald Trump is the one who flung his ridiculously loaded diaper all over our political
Mhm.
norms, and people think it's fine to behave like that. And it's not. It is not. It's not fine to behave that way in real life. It is not fine to exhibit internet chat room behavior out in the real world. It is not okay to threaten people over politics. Can you
Right.
take a step back and take a breath and look at the bigger picture and see what it is that you're actually doing? And again, Maxine in the background.
Aw.
If you're someone like me who's experienced intimidation and threats from MAGA, which I have, what I have come to learn is most of them, and of course there are outliers in every group, right? And you can't say one person represents a whole group or the whole group's everybody's the same, but most of them use intimidation as as their tactics to
Right.
get people to be quiet, get people to get in line, people to be compliant. And a lot of what you say is true, in that if somebody steps out of line, MAGA people will attack them online, will swarm them, there will be mean tweets. In very rare cases, it will bleed over into real life, like it did with
Right.
me, like it'll do with the election workers. Closer to the election, I think we'll probably see more extreme behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also, I think we really need to talk about what Laura Trump said the other day, and that they're going to have people at the polls who can physically handle ballots and shit. No, you
Right.
can't. No, you can't.
No.
That's
Yeah.
election interference. The Democrats can't do it, and you can't do it either. So,
Yeah. And if you
to me,
try,
it's
if you try, your people are
a
going to get thrown out,
felony.
and it's not. Yeah, and they're going to go to jail, and nobody around
Yep.
them is going to go, this is unfair, because Democrats aren't going to be trying to do this shit. They just aren't.
And we don't do that.
Mm.
We don't cheat. We don't intimidate.
Right.
We don't use violence to get ahead in life. We don't
Mhm.
do that. That's not politically normal. And
Yeah.
for this, everything that he does being so normalized that it's impossible for anyone to stay focused on any one of the terrible things that he's doing, that's all part of it as well. to keep
Right.
everybody confused and running around in circles like your wind-up toys hitting the wall, and all you're doing is backing up and continuing to hit the wall over and over and over,
Mhm.
so you can't get anywhere. Meanwhile, Democrats continue to make progress and moving forward. And the other thing is that what you see in Democrats that you don't see in Republicans, and this was another thing that Colin Jost touched on Saturday. My cats are fighting, by the way; they're chasing each other and fighting. So just so you know, he touched on Joe Biden's decency. That my
Yes.
grandfather voted for you. His final election, he voted for you because you are a decent man.
Mhm.
And we've been saying that about Joe Biden all along. You don't have to love every single one of his policies. You can be troubled by this, that, and the other thing. But remember, you're not choosing a mate for life. This isn't
Yeah.
Tinder. You're not swiping on a candidate. You know, you don't have to be in love. What you need to do is be able to look at a track record of accomplishments and competency and decades of foreign policy experience, and the fact that Joe Biden continues to put the well-being of the United States of America ahead of himself. So, and that is ultimately what a president is supposed to do, regardless of party affiliation. It's supposed to be about the best interest of the country. Why else do you run?
Right.
Yes, you have to have an ego as a politician. Yes, you're going to be serving yourself at some level. But at its core, the reason it's called public service is because you're serving the public, not yourself. It's not about lining your pockets. It's not about, you know, adding more zeros to your bank account. It's not about showing off. And it's not about anything that Trump thought the presidency was about is actually the opposite of what it's about. So,
Right.
you know, when people are talking about make America great again, I just want people to be decent to each other. If we could be more decent to each other, that would be delightful. And remembering again, what is truly at stake is your personal livelihood, your future, your family, your retirement, your children's education, the women in your life. Everybody who's watching who is a MAGA person right now has a woman in their life, a mother, an auntie, a grandma, a sister, a cousin, a daughter, a teacher, whatever. That woman has every right to choose what she does with her body and her life as
Right.
you do. And so
Not
to
right
see each
now,
other
though.
again as human beings.
You know how
Fuck.
pissed I get about this idea, but the idea that right now, as things stand right now, this very second, not in the future, not in some foreseeable possibility, women are second-class citizens in the United States during my lifetime specifically, and it's disgusting because a woman has to choose which state she wants to live in based on which rights she'd like to actually have. And in some states, she has more rights than others. And that means it's not a
Unacceptable.
right. That means that men have rights and women have privileges. And the privileges dictated by the men in their life or the crazy women that they've been, I guess they've hypnotized into believing they're bullshit. So the idea that, a swath of our voters would be like, I don't know, I don't know, is there really a difference? Yes, there's a material difference that's being played out right now.
Tremendous difference.
Like women dying of septicemia, women dying of ectopic pregnancies, like a baby
from
was found.
emergency rooms.
A baby was found in a dumpster in Florida this morning, and right now we don't know if the girl had it and threw it away or if it died. If she gave birth to a stillborn child that she couldn't like get help with, and then threw it away because she was scared or whatever. We don't know that part of it yet. But that's not something we were hearing on the regular previous to this.
No. And, we need to set aside any false equivalence arguments because when we start talking about abortion rights, a lot of people will bring up the vaccines and the mandates and all of that. That's not the same thing because you can't catch pregnancy from sitting next to a pregnant person. You can catch COVID from sitting next to an unmasked person who has COVID. But when it comes to pregnancy, it would be wonderful if people would, I don't know, read a fucking biology book. There was an ABC after school special when we were little called My Mom's Having a Baby. And you can find out how babies are made by watching that if you don't know. But it's all about science, okay? It's not about God. It's not about your Bible. It's not about what you want or you prayed for. It is a scientific fact. You cannot have a pregnancy without a sperm. So men cause 100% of pregnancies. Women cannot spontaneously reproduce. I don't care what your Bible said, and I don't care what you think. Even if you make it in a test tube, even if you're doing IVF, you need a sperm. There should be consequences for men if there are consequences for women. If you don't
Mhm.
agree with that, then you should be screaming for a national, for Roe to be codified, for abortion to be protected, because it's a medical procedure that saves lives.
Mhm.
And just like any other medical procedure that would save a life, you wouldn't turn me away from the ER if my arm was hanging off and I was bleeding to death. But if I was having an ectopic pregnancy and I was bleeding out from my vagina, you could turn me away in several states
Right.
because you'd be afraid of treating me because of you're a doctor and you're afraid you'd be arrested for treating me
Right.
medically because of whatever your state. That's fucked up in the United States of America in any year. But in the
Right.
year 2024, it's unconscionable, and it's never okay for the government to interfere in when you decide you're starting your family. And it is especially not okay for a bunch of old, decrepit white men to look at a 10-year-old who was raped by her uncle and say, you need to carry that baby to term and call
Right.
yourself the pro-life party. Shame, shame,
Mhm.
shame. And you can't shame the shameless. But when you look at it like that, most people who are able to get pregnant, I'm not going into trans rights with you. Most people who can get pregnant don't know that they're pregnant until about
Right.
7 weeks, 8 weeks. A lot of those pregnancies that are lost, that are not viable, that are miscarried, that is not the host body's fault. It's
Mhm.
just science.
Mhm.
Okay. It's not some divine intervention and all of these crazy cult things. The bottom line is, it is nobody's business what we do with our bodies when it comes to starting our families or having a consensual sexual experience. So, and because there are no laws on the books about controlling men's reproductive systems, there should be no laws on the books controlling women's. So
Mhm.
it's just another reason to vote for Democrats. And fucking hell, when we get our House majority back, which really won't be that difficult at this point, codifying Roe is like the first order of business
Right.
in the next Congress. So just I
Yeah,
want
the
everyone
idea
to
that
take a step back. I mean, would you want to eradicate any other medical procedure? No, you wouldn't. So please stop. Where no one is
yeah, they kind
murdering
of
babies.
I gotta say, yeah, they kind of would. I mean, these are not just people who are attacking,
Well, they are death
the
cults, so
difficulties. Yeah, the difficulties that women run into with their pregnancies. They're also anti-vaccine on a massive scale, and it's
right. And they're also
and
now anti-birth control, which makes no
right.
fucking sense.
Well, they always were, because I would argue that's what this is about. This is about like outbreeding what they think of as the other hordes, whatever that xenophobic crowd that they're
But they
particularly
don't have any
fixated on.
solutions, right? So let's just say you eradicate birth control and you outlaw abortion, and then you have a population explosion, and you can't sustain it because you want to
Right,
also cut SNAP benefits, and you want to
right.
cut Medicare, and you want to cut public education, and you want to cut state funding for this, that, and the other thing. What is your expectation? What is your long-term goal here? If you have a massive baby boom, how are you going to take care of them? You
Mhm.
put them out in the fields to work because you want to keep the migrants out? What's your
Well, I
plan?
think
What's your end game? What's
that's
going
not
on?
far off. I gotta say, that's
No, it
not far
isn't.
off
Which,
from
but
what they
it's
seem to be talking about. I mean, that's why they want to bring
That's
back
your
child labor.
1830 shit right
Yeah,
there.
break child labor laws specifically so that people have an excuse and a reason. Like, oh, I'll have an extra couple of kids, so I'll have some farm hands around, or I'll have some people, that I can rent my kids out for work. And there's a myriad of reasons why we have child labor laws in this country, not the least of which was the shady shit that was going on in motels in the South for a good long while with extra kids you didn't necessarily like or want. So
I mean, between
but the
child labor
contraception,
laws and
right? I don't think. Here's
it's
the
just
thing. I think you're talking to a group of people. I think largely who believe that the Lord, life finds a way, as it were. And so the idea that they're
right.
going to worry about educating or providing for the new children that are brought into the world, they're not thinking that far ahead. They think
Well,
it's
they
a
never
miracle
do.
to start with. So they think, God will pick, his winners and losers. And if one of them dies because they're too stupid to, look left and right before they cross the street, that's just part of the plan too, right? And the cream will rise, and because there's this weird kind of Christic Darwinian philosophy that goes on. Because at the same time, while they allegedly believe, or want you to believe that they're Christians, or that they believe in this kind of the morality of Christ, at the same time they all behave like Darwinists. And I don't mean just people who believe in some sort of vague version of survival of the fittest that fits how life evolves over millennia, which is true Darwinism, but this idea like the Darwin Awards kind of stuff, that when death happens to somebody else, it's kind of funny and it was meant to happen, and when it happens to them, it's a fucking tragedy because it's somebody else's fault, right?
Exactly.
And
well, that comes from the grudge master passing that down, and that no one has to take responsibility for what they do. It's always someone else's fault. And that's another frustration, because it's like, how many different people have already gone to prison for Donald Trump and it has nothing to do with him?
Right.
Come on. Michael Cohen went to prison for him in this particular case that he's sitting in right now, but it has nothing to do with Trump. Guys, you have to stop. I mean, like, stop. You and Bob touched on this earlier. Twisting yourself into conspiracy pretzels to avoid any truths about Donald Trump benefits nobody.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, again, you and I have always talked. I've often talked about religion, and I'm sorry that if people feel that they need a crutch to get through life. I know life is hard. I know it can be challenging, but it's also it's on you. Like, you don't like the way things are going. You need to take action instead of sitting around and whining. And that's another thing that I like to point out. Like, Republicans sure love to complain, but they never offer any solutions.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's what Democrats do. Democrats see a problem and then they, I don't know, write a really awesome infrastructure bill, or they implement the CHIPS Act. And you were talking about that guy earlier who was like, everything Biden's done is terrible. And like, well, which thing do you have a problem with? Cutting student loan, doing this, doing that. Like, his list of accomplishments continues to grow, as does Donald Trump's list of crimes. So, when you're doing your false equivalencing, like, the only thing that they have in common is, like, they can both wear suits, but one looks better than the other. But it was like Joe said on Saturday night, like, he's the adult and he's running against a 6-year-old. It's basically
that was the best joke. I was trying to pick the best joke of the night.
That one and the Boebert joke, man. No, he didn't get enough credit for the Boebert joke. That was a good one too. He landed a lot of good jokes. That's a tough room. Tough room, and it's also
they're predisposed to not want to like laugh at him because they're afraid of being considered biased or whatever by people who have no sense of humor.
He's the first one to laugh at himself, right? Like, Joe Biden has a wonderful sense of humor about himself, and he displays that every single day. And not scripted. He can improv. He can make up funny stuff off the cuff. He's very, very funny, and he's very quick-witted. It's that Irish sense of humor that he's got. And if you don't have a sense of humor, no, he's very funny. Very
and Water
funny.
Goddess says she noticed that my jokes went over well at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. Yes, it is true. 3 or 4 of my jokes literally made it into the White House Correspondents' Dinner, both in Collins and in a couple of the other speakers as well. Huh?
How'd that happen?
Just lifted.
How do you know that? It's not a coincidence. Can you cite an example?
We've been through this a bunch of times. Like, I'm constantly like, you watch the show on the regular and watch the night after on any of the nighttime talk shows. Now I would argue there's 30% overlap in some of these situations where you'll come up with the same bit, but when the wording is the same, then and I gotta tell you, I'm fine with it. I am totally fine with it. If it's
because next year.
Political jokes they know, and they'll owe me later. They'll all be good to me later. Don't worry about it, because I'm not going to call it. Because, by the way, the political jokes, unfortunately, are like fast food or toilet paper. They're gone tomorrow, especially in the situation that we're in. And by the time I would get pissed about it, I'd already be on to the next 10 jokes. So I'm okay with it. and they need to be said. So the audience is the important aspect of it. Yeah, if
Well,
somebody, but if somebody pulls the kidney live anywhere, I'm going to sue. No, but for the record, and people at the Sexy Liberal who are watching the Sexy Liberal Comedy Tour know this as well. But point being, and I want, like, overall, there are two aspects of what you'll say when we talk about religion. First of all, I don't view spirituality of any sort as a crutch. I view it as purposeful living beyond the known. And because this idea of, like, if you only believe in what you know, you wouldn't believe in oxygen either until you materially show it to you. And even if somebody shows you on paper that there's oxygen in the air, you still can't see it. You're trusting their word written by someone else in the same way. That's the issue. So that will always be a part of human existence. You have faith that the reality and the explanation of reality is there. People operate in faith. But the point I'm trying to make is that one of the things that Republicans seem to jump right past, but the Jimmy Carters and the Joe Bidens of the world don't, which is faith without works is nothing. That faith in service of your fellow man is the expression of true faith.
That's why I leave those men alone, them and Stephen Colbert, because they live their faith in a very quiet way.
Right.
Showy about it. They're not like, look at me, I'm building Habitat for Humanity houses and I'm 98. They don't do that. They just quietly perform their acts of service.
Right. And unfortunately, in this world, their true faith and the goodness that is brought to them by the religious beliefs and the spiritual beliefs that they have are completely eclipsed by the Salesforce bullshit WeWork version of Christianity that Donald Trump and his acolytes espouse. And that's what I will always push back on. And because I would not, for example, I'm not going to I would not say that Netanyahu and Harvey Weinstein are exemplary of Jews in general. And to me, that would be the same thing. Them. No, I know. Right. But that's the point I'm trying to make, is that when you make, when people talk about religion in those kind of broad swaths, because of the awful that is Donald Trump and his, whatever that woman who was like Paula White, who's like, and Lord, blessed be, like
crazy,
that kind of horseshit.
People.
Right. That's
people
not
who speak
indicative.
In tongues.
Right. Yeah.
What is that? Come on, stop.
I have to say, though, I was very proud of a joke that I did write at the show this weekend, which of course related to a couple things, and out of context being what it is that the reason we say, we yell Jesus when we hit our hand with a hammer is because he's the one guy that can relate. And I was very proud of that as an improv joke, and that's a keeper. But meanwhile, though, can I say that there are gifts that keep on giving, and one of those is this asshole.
Can I tell you something? I was very gratified. Saturday night, I was watching the White House Correspondents' Dinner on MSNBC, and so they had a really good panel that they had together. It was Eamon and Rick Wilson was on, and Dean Obadella and Jason Selvig, who's one half of the Good Liars, right?
Yeah.
That's what they're called.
Yep.
And it was very, very funny. But there was a moment where Dean called him the Godfarter, which is my hashtag. I felt very gratified. He is, look at him. That's your guy.
Yeah. The Nodfather, right?
Snorleone.
Yeah.
He came up with that. Don Snorleone, the Godfarter. That's your guy.
Yeah.
Stay awake. I mean, now they should start taking bets on whether or not he can stay awake in court all day. What's the over-under on that?
It's increasingly hard to find drawings of him from court with his eyes open. They even the ones where they're putting something in his hands, they're not drawing his eyes open because they weren't at the time. Now, this is not the first time, by the way, that we've dealt with Trump like this. If you'll recall, let me see if I can show this on the screen.
I really wish they were televising this, because
remember when Trump fell asleep at the COVID briefings?
Oh yeah.
While Pence was talking, while Pence was talking, this motherfucker zonked out, and people just let it slide. Yeah.
What kind of zonk out if Mike Pence is talking. So, you can't really blame the guy. But if you can't stay awake, you can't call your opponent sleepy.
Right.
Just
That would be
remember,
the
when it
truth.
comes to
Right.
this fuckface, every accusation is a confession. So
Always. Right.
crooked, sleepy, any of his nicknames, just turn it right back on.
Well, that goes to the
Except the
election
racist
interference.
ones.
Right. Now, he comes out and says about his trial, this is all about election interference. And increasingly, I'm glad he's brought it up because that's exactly what it's about. This is not about hush money. The hush money part of it was him trying to hide this so that he could interfere in the election by covering it. But there was another big part of this, which was him like colluding with David Pecker and Michael Cohen to get these stories written about Ted Cruz and all of his opponents so that he could make it through the primary. He scuttled their careers using his control over an aspect of the media. And they gave, it was almost like this, like, it was Catch and Kill was a big part of it. That was the Karen McDougal. That was the Stormy Daniels story. That was anything else they could find. The doorman story about the love child.
Doorman story.
But
then also pumping up bad fake stories about his opponents as well as other
which is the bigger part of it. I think that's a bigger part of the story, and it's even more embarrassing. It's more embarrassing, to the Ted Cruzes of the world. Let this shit slide, knowing full well it was happening, and now knowing. I mean, first of all, Ted Cruz is going to lose his election this year, which is going to be fucking hilarious. But part of it. Part of the reason he's going to lose to a Democrat, part of the reason he's going to lose is because of this. Is because, never mind that he's got this kind of George Bushy, squeaky, little, weird voice for somebody.
Him is so pathetic.
Oh, it's so lame. Just so fucking
Donald
lame.
Trump's permanent bidet and toilet. He is the absolute fucking worst. He introduced a bill for term limits in the Senate and then immediately announced he was running for a third term.
Right.
Just just nothing. Everything is
I love it.
And also,
right.
Do you remember last spring, Ted Cruz sent out a fundraising text with an image of Alvin Bragg instead of his actual Democratic opponent, Colin Allred, because don't all black men look alike, kids? Sure they do. And never issued an apology to either Alvin Bragg or Colin Allred. So,
which is the closest thing to him trying to do a get out the vote for his voters that he could possibly do, because they think that's
makes
funny.
Them look worse. It's fine with me. Imagine what David Pecker has in his safe that we haven't heard about yet.
Right.
I bet he's got that PP tape. He's got the PP tape, is what a lot of people are saying.
Sure.
But basically, and my favorite thing on Friday, we kept hearing more and more about the testimony about what the National Enquirer did for Trump and all of the Pecker puns on Twitter. Trump got fucked by a pecker. Just like shit like that. It's so enjoyable because his misery is my life's blood. Please continuously hook me up to an IV of his misery so I can thrive on it, because this has been such a long time coming. And again, this is just the first one. He gets convicted on this.
So I think this is,
and he's not getting immunity.
A lot of people get pissed about how slowly Merrick Garland was going or whatever this, nonsense. And I've said all along that to mute the impact of his supporters losing their shit and harming people because they're defending him, right? That's my biggest concern. I don't give a rat's ass how long it takes for him to go to jail. I think it will, right? I think that's important. I think he's going to go to jail for some of this shit eventually. Probably the classified documents case will be when he sees the inside of a court, a real jail cell.
So?
Yep, I really do. And the reason is because of the his what?
Appealing. He'll stay out.
You can only appeal so much. And in this particular, you can't appeal from outside of jail in a case as serious as that. It doesn't work the same way. You could do it in this case because he's never been convicted of a crime before. But by the time they get around to that case, he'll be a convicted felon. So there's a different set of rules, even by Eileen Cannon standards. The important part for me, though, is that the mythology of this dickhead get chipped away at. So his supporters have been leaving. Look at the Nikki Haley voters. Look at the people who, increasingly, it's only front row Joes and angry fuck you kind of maggots. But even then,
people are standing outside the courtroom protesting.
There's nobody really showing up for him. But so what do you got to do? You got to take away the bullshit that he was ever a good businessman. Well, we've done that with the fraud case, and increasingly the fact that he can't run a charity in New York should have been a fucking red flag, and that he stole from veterans, and that his son stole from kids with cancer at St. Jude's. That should have been enough, but it's there. Hang that up there. That's on the shelf, and that can always be referenced when you're talking to maggots about this. When you're like,
And
he's
the
a great
bankrupting
guy.
the casinos.
Right. Well, yeah,
Bankrupting the casinos. That's just bad business.
And his
Every
finance
business
partner in the
endeavor.
casino's dying in a helicopter crash. Weird. Anyways, we'll get to
Weird.
that later. But the point is that he, bankrupted a casino, Trump water, the football, his airline, all this stuff goes to shit.
Everything.
Right. But
ETTD.
specifically the fraud. And then now it's the idea that God sent him because he's a Christian man and he's a good man and blah, blah. And even though he was that, they're trying to attack him. That was not even real, but they're after him. You chip away at that with those people with this hush money storyline. Because ultimately, like I said, it's not really a hush money trial. He tried to and was successful in interfering in the election in 2016 by catching killing stories about himself and paying for that to be done, which is an election violation and a contribution in kind from AMI, David Pecker, and the Inquirer, all three, giving his campaign money in the form of free miniature billboards at every fucking grocery store in the country that denigrate his opponents and didn't have stories about him fucking around on his wife specifically. So they gave him all this free press to cover his ass. So that's what really this story is about. And every time he comes out and goes, this is about election interference, you're like, you damn right it is. Right.
He just needs a monkey on his shoulder and a cup. Right.
And the one big area where there's a bunch of people who are going to fucking pound sand is when the details start coming out about the conspiracy he engaged in to hide classified documents from the government, trying to pick them back up and lying to them. And that second red weld envelope that he gave them, that wrapped up envelope that was wrapped in plastic so that it was sealed when it left his hands, when they finally gave up, like, I want to say 25 documents that they had there before the actual search warrant happened, proves he did not declassify any of that shit. His awareness that the stuff had to be turned over, his awareness that it had to be turned over in a red weld envelope, his awareness that it had to be sealed when it left the property, that it had to be wrapped in fucking layers of plastic tape so that if anything happened to it, and that it had to have a fucking tracker with it that they gave him to put in there like a fucking, like one of the little Apple sensors. Yeah, right. That means everything he has said about I magically declassified stuff, or I considered it declassified, or it was all bullshit, and he
lied?
knew it.
No,
he knew it. Right. Well, no. Even if he, an Apple tag. Right. Even if he forgot recently to cover his own ass, he knew at the time, and his attorneys knew it, which means they told him. And that's the other reason why his attorneys have, a couple of them have basically turned state's evidence on them. And the Arizona case is going to be another example of that. And everywhere they try to set up these fake fucking electors, he was in on it. And there's going to be a point where he's always going to have, 20% of the Republican maggots that will stick with him no matter what. But he's going to shed half of that hardcore constituency in one of these cases or another. At some point, if it's not the fucking around on his wife while she's got a 5-month-old, it's gonna be the classified documents. If it's not that, it's gonna be the fact that they feel suckered by the, like they woke up and they're staring at their Trump University diploma and it's not worth shit. It's gonna be one.
And he's not gonna get immunity from SCOTUS. I really don't think you can.
He is not.
The fact that they even entertained hearing arguments about it, that's problematic. They're compromised. We need to expand the court. That's another reason to vote Democrat in November, because that's something that Democrats could get accomplished. I understand, and we've also touched on this as well. I understand being disappointed in someone who made you promises and then they didn't deliver on them. He promised you nothing but winning and has put up nothing but losing. I don't know how you look at the situation he has gotten himself into. And again, he got himself into this situation.
Yeah.
It is not a giant Democratic plot being funded by George Soros. I have never once gotten a George Soros check. Please believe me when I tell you that. And it's really, I It just reminds me again of like middle school bullies doing dipshit things for, shits and
For
giggles because it's
lulls.
funny. Because it's
Yeah.
funny to make fun of the smart kids, and it's easier to shit on the smart kids than do your work and do your own research and do the right thing. And you're already in the back of the classroom smoking cools and cutting
Hmm.
class. You've already decided you're the bad seed, so you're gonna lean into it and embrace it and be a dick for the sake of being a dick because you think it's funny. It's not funny. It's our
Yeah.
democracy. It's your future. It's your country. So
Yeah. Well,
when we become a global joke because of Donald Trump, and you think Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton are in cahoots with Obama for some giant Democratic conspiracy to make Donald Trump look bad. He doesn't need any help looking bad. He's
from
done it
anybody.
by
Right.
himself his whole fucking life before he even ran for president. And one of the things, like if you watch the White House Correspondents' Dinner and they showed the clips from the previous ones where they were mocking him and then he
Yeah.
never came back.
Yeah. He wouldn't show up.
How
Yeah.
what a fucking this is where the snowflake thing came from. He's the snowflake. He's all thin-skinned and worried. All he cares about is what the public thinks of him. It's all about
Right.
his ego and what people think. And then he can stand in front of a courtroom where he's on trial in a criminal case and still say he is an innocent person and say none of it is his fault and he's not responsible. You people, the people who want to believe that, no, because
Hmm.
when he's done with this criminal trial, there's another one, and the January
Right.
6th one, and the stolen documents one,
Oh,
and
I got news
he's
for you
not
as
done, and the
well.
RICO case in Georgia.
Yeah, I'll
Not
bring up
done.
something like he's going to be added to other lawsuits on top of this shit. And again, I have said this from the beginning that he is not in some ways afraid of what is known in his criminal history that's coming out right now that's involved in the
Right.
fraud that was involved in this case or in the classified documents. What he's afraid of is wait till they see what I really did. If they think
Yeah.
that's bad, wait till they see the
Oh
real
man.
shit.
Oh
That's
yeah. No, there's so
like
much more
his
still to come.
finances. Fraud is the least of it. The fact that he got loans he didn't deserve is not that surprising. I mean, look at Robert Durst. Look at the Durst family. Look at all that kind of shit. Like that's pretty
Yeah.
part and parcel to New York real estate. On top of that, though, is like, does this motherfucker actually own anything anymore?
I don't think he does.
Right. And is all the financial backing that he has, Robert Durst, not Fred Durst, but chat room.
He
The
did
guy
it all
from
for the
from the
nookie.
Jinx. Yeah, right. Yeah, Fred Durst did it all for the nookie, and who can blame him? It's as good a reason for it as any. But the
And
but in
sometimes you just
terms
want to
of
break stuff.
yeah,
Right.
in terms of like the Chicago Tower, for example, who the fuck gave Deutsche Bank the money to back his loans under the table without mentioning who it is, and who in that investment group that he had to fill in the rest of it, right?
Mhm.
Who the fuck are they? Largely, they're going to be Russian or Saudi. Period. End of story.
Right.
And that's so true of almost all of his properties. That's what's scaring the shit out of him, because once they start selling off his properties, or once he's found, guilty, once he loses this appeal, and he's gonna lose the appeal, even though he's been able to put 178 million down through his buddy by bouncing it through a Charles Schwab account and jerking everybody
Yeah,
around.
but they
He's
rejected.
still
They rejected that. So
right. Well,
he
they argued new terms on it, and they have to hold it in a cash account, and they're in the process of doing it. Do I think they're going to do it? No. But he's going to lose anyways, and he's going to lose all that money, and he doesn't have the cash for it. He never did. Even the money he says he has for his fucking campaign is bullshit.
doesn't have
Everything
anything.
just right. And if he sells his Truth Social stock to try and have that money, it will crater the stock even more, and it will be fucking hilarious. The only purpose of that stock right now is to bubble up, suck money out of the pockets of maggots, so that when he does his short sell on his own stock and screws them all, they can lose their shirt. And I'm for it. I don't care.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't remember where I saw it, but I saw it earlier today where it said something like Democrats don't want to welcome any Republican votes or whatever. I'm like, what? I don't know what fucking bullshit that is.
Right.
There's plenty of room for you over here in
Yep.
the light. Come on, cross over,
Yeah.
children. All are welcome
Right.
here.
In
Where
reality. Right.
on Earth One, where we
Yeah.
can teach you to cope with things that are hard, and you
Water
don't
Goddess is
have
saying,
to.
can you short your own stock? No, but what you
Yes,
can do is create a
you can
short of it.
influence. Right, you can
Yeah,
influence a shorting of your stock by
yeah,
continuing to put bullshit out on your dying social media app that not even a million people, not even half a million people use Truth
right.
Social regularly. So,
On
but
our there is a side cause celeb that I do want to bring up with you, and a couple people in the chat room have brought this up, and this is a story that we've talked about, is like how hungry the maggot crowd is for Hunter Biden's wiener has been a big thing,
they're
right?
starving.
Yes,
Nancy Mace would
yeah,
absolutely cut a bitch if they got in front of her if Hunter Biden was in the room.
yeah,
Nancy Mace wants that D so badly.
right.
So
So
badly. They all want
right,
it. They all want it. And again, it goes back to their repressed upbringing where they were all taught their sex feelings were bad. And
mm-hmm,
so that's why they all can't deal. They can't
mm-hmm,
deal with the fact that Hunter Biden's father openly loves and supports him because Donald Trump's father didn't, and that's why Donald
yeah.
Trump himself is a terrible parent.
Especially in spite of his
Hunter
election.
Biden,
Do you think there's a
yeah,
if there was a Trump kid with an addiction, do you think
there
Trump
is
would even
one. We just
mention
don't
it?
get to. We don't.
Right. Well, no, I mean that it
Excuse me,
had.
Coke Drip Jr. is absolutely hooked through the bag.
I
So
completely agree.
come on,
But you know what I'm talking
come on.
about. If you had a son who'd
Someone
been in
who
rehab, they just avoid the
right.
rehab part of it. They don't give a fuck.
Well, of course
If
they
there had
would,
been
and they would say how he redeemed himself and what a good Christian or whatever.
no, I
But
think I don't think Trump would have anything to do with one of his kids if they went through rehab. I think he would
he
stop
would have to do
conversing with.
something to save political face. But
Yeah, he would avoid them entirely. I don't think they would
like
ever.
Barron,
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I don't.
you just try to.
Barron's
I don't know.
Barron's innocent and off in a box. What I'm saying is that if Eric had gone through rehab, we wouldn't hear about Eric. Eric would be the other Tiffany. I'm just telling you. He wouldn't bring them up.
I agree with that.
He wouldn't
I agree
address
with that.
this. He wouldn't say, "I love my son." He wouldn't defend him if he'd been through anything. He would just act like like he would say, we have
He would see it as
like
weakness.
I got
Trump
all the good
says he can't
genes,
stand
and half
weakness.
my family has shit genes for alcoholism, like my brother had it, and it must have skipped over and got all over my other kid. We don't talk about him.
Oh my
But
Christ.
isn't Ivanka fuckable? That's what he would do. So, anyways,
That's,
this is
wow, aren't you guys proud? So
right.
yeah,
This
no,
is the story
here's
that
the
I think
thing.
is great. This is Hunter Biden is going to it says escalates fight against Fox News over
claims and explicit photos. Okay,
he's
so
suing them.
Marjorie Taylor Greene is dying for the serious deep dickin'. She's dying for it. Obviously, her beta cook 5-head boyfriend freak on a leash,
right,
must be hung like
Mr.
a
Magoo.
fetus. None of them are. Oh my God, none of them have ever satisfied a woman properly, which is why these women thirst for Hunter. Because say what you want, every photo that they put up of him looks like a Herb Ritz thirst trap from the 90s. They, like the black and white ones where he's like passed out in a tub and has a cigarette in his mouth, and he couldn't look more fuckable. It's just that's what he looks like. He's hot. I get it, ladies. I see what you see. And it's kind of like, and it's naughty because he kind of has a little bit of a naughty boy track record. Nothing too bad, right? No dead hookers or anything. Little tax fraud, little tax evasion. He can pay a tax bill. Nothing he's done is that terrible. Little drug addiction, right? Every picture is like, I have this vision of like Marjorie Taylor Greene walking into her local Kinko's and everyone going, "Oh my God, not her again." Because all she does is create bigger and bigger vision boards of his D. Like, be thirstier. Be thirstier. There is no such thing as a hot Republican. You can't put up a photo of an attractive Republican man. There's no such thing. There is not a thing like that.
That specifically, though, I think this is about time. This is long overdue, and I do think it is great that that he's finally going, "Hey, these are hacked images of me and the buff, and you have no right to them whatsoever." And
I hope he goes, get him. Go get him, Hunter. I'm totally on your team. Anything that's exploitative. He's a private citizen. He doesn't hold a public office. His father does. And it's, he's not trying to get ahead in life. You can't even Nepo baby him because you don't hear about him going off and acting like a Kardashian. He doesn't behave like that.
Right.
So, he's He's just trying to live his life like a dignified private citizen, and no one's going to let him live because they're incredibly jealous of the fact that his father openly loves him. And isn't
Mhm.
that stupid? That's really stupid. And to fault somebody for having some trouble in life and then trying to better themselves. I mean, that's just to bully someone for that is ridiculous, but they don't have any positive examples in their own party to hold up and say,
Right.
here is someone we as Republicans can be proud of. Who are you proud of, Republicans? What have they done for you? Who's a shining example? Who's your Gavin Newsom? You don't have a Studley Newsom. You don't have a deep Democrat. Oh my God. You don't have anybody that you could describe as fine. You don't have any Bay. My friend Connie, everybody should follow, she is her whole Bay Bucks, BAE, Bay Bucks going
Mhm.
on to raise money for Democrats. I mean, look at Cory Booker. Look at Hakeem Jeffries. Look at Harry Dunn, who's running for Congress. We have some fine, fine men. Our women are attractive and they don't look like they're all at a Mar-a-Lago buffet all the time. You know, like
Right.
there's comportment and there's dignity and there's decency. And that's what all the D words for Democrats, including Hunter's D. We're all hot and fired up and raring to go. And MAGA is jealous. Bullying is rooted in jealousy. If they weren't jealous, they would say other things about them. They would go after, I don't know, policy instead. And they can't do that because they can't put up their own policies and say, here's Trump's policy that was better than Biden's. Here are all of the
Right.
laws that Donald Trump passed that Joe Biden couldn't. There's no comparison. You can't do it. So,
Right. Well, and I think the essence of, the infrastructure bill is going to have more legs than I think even, that
it's
Republicans are ready to deal with.
huge.
Absolutely.
It,
And
and they don't have
that's,
anything to compare it to. And then the
and
other thing is,
Roe,
as
the
we're
potential
talking
for,
about,
yeah, for solving
yeah,
the
as
Roe
we're talking
issue.
about,
Those are the two big things going into the fall.
yes, and as we're talking about Trump sitting in court and losing this criminal trial, what the Republican Party is really going to have to figure out what they're doing. You
Yeah.
cannot have a convicted felon as your candidate. You can't. You can't
They're
have him as
gonna.
your nominee. FEC, where are you? Where is the
Right.
FEC? This should
Well,
be
no, I mean,
absolutely
Here's
against
the
the
thing. It is
law.
not illegal
He
to have a
should not be
convicted
allowed to
felon.
run.
No, it should never be illegal in the United States. I will stand by this. It should never be illegal in the United States for a convicted felon to be to run for office or whatever. Because people can pay their debt to society. Now, somebody who hasn't finished their
He can't
penitence
run for
yet.
office from prison. I mean, I
Well,
don't
you
know that
can,
he'll ever
because
sit behind bars,
otherwise
but
you'd have a situation where somebody could politically lock people up and say, well, this person's in jail, therefore they cannot run, and as a way of Navalnying people. We don't specifically have a rule
we
against
don't
that
do that.
because we don't want that to be a potential. Here's the thing.
No.
He absolutely can. They can run a fucking dude from solitary if they want to, but that's up to
But
them to
why?
convince people.
Why do you want this as the face of your party?
That's
A
the
felon.
question, because they should have the choice. Again, we're big pro-choice fans over here. They should have the choice to do something fucking dumb like that, because I don't see.
Hey, is not your solution either.
Right.
So
Oh,
good luck.
but he is, because who's he stealing votes from? Yeah, he's stealing votes from Donald Trump.
From the
By and
crazy.
large, 70-30, the
Get
votes
crazier.
he's
Go ahead,
getting,
go
which are
ahead.
still fucking nothing, 70-30, the votes are coming from Trump. And increasingly, that's who he's got to take votes from, because Democrats aren't buying it. That's why we kicked him to the curb in the first place. There's no situation where he grabs enough Democratic votes in any circumstance to sway this election. Ever, not ever,
No
period.
real
Not this
Democrat
time
is
around.
going to back RFK.
Nope,
No.
not.
No,
but
no.
but there is in some red states and some sort of purplish states, there is absolutely enough people who don't think Donald Trump is sufficiently anti-vax enough and will go with RFK Jr. And I'm not going to court those voters, and neither are you. They're going to go someplace, and they're going to follow the craziest fucking rabbit down the deepest, darkest, crazy rabbit hole that they can find, and that's RFK Jr. in this case. It's not Biden, and it's not,
All right, well, let him take votes away from Trump. I'm fine with that.
That's absolutely
Now,
it.
last Monday, switching
Yes.
gears because we have to wrap up.
Yep.
Last Monday, you promised everyone that you were going to announce the Portland date for Nerd Halen.
That's right. So
The
here
Portland
it
date
is.
and the venue.
Yep. Give me 1 second.
Put it up next to the Low Bar Corral schedule and see what we see and see if we can bring it all together.
September 6th
Okay.
is Portland, and let's see if he's given me the actual venue. But for sure there is one, 9/6.
Okay. And what day of the week is that? Do we know?
That'll be a Sunday, I believe, because
Okay.
the show is on Saturday. Most of these are going to be after the date itself. So that's official, 9/6. And let's see. He'll probably have posted it at nerdhalen.com. I should probably just check there because he probably just did it. There we go. Because it's gonna, it's gonna be a good time. Plus, I also want to even still extend the idea that I'm going to do a show in and about your area as well. Okay, there's July. There's okay, he hasn't officially. There's
You mean your own stand-up
Portland,
comedy show?
Dante's. No,
you're playing at Dante's. Okay.
Yep, we're gonna be at Dante's.
Okay.
Yep.
To Dante's
That's
from where I live.
It's where? Is it close?
I can walk.
Far?
It's at
right
Burnside and it's on Burnside. It's in. So it's a little sketchy around there, but I was down there yesterday
Portland.
actually because I had brunch yesterday with a lot of my friends at Mother's Bistro yesterday, and so the capping off my birthday weekend and but Dante's is it's a legendary Portland venue, and they also do something there called Karaoke from Hell, where you do karaoke with a live band, which is really super fun. But because you'll be
if I get in there, if they're doing it the night before, the Sexy Liberal show or the night after, I'll do both. I don't care. But at the very least, 9/6, I will be, right there after the Sexy Liberal show.
Liberal is the 5th then? I
believe so. Yes.
And it's at the Schnitz. Is that at the Schnitz?
Schnitz. Yes, the Schnitz.
The Arlene Schnitzer Concert Hall. I'm so excited to finally meet everybody else that's on the tour with you, and perhaps give them an autographed copy of my book, The Sound of Settling. Here's The Sound of Settling right here. We've sold 634 copies of the book. We have today and tomorrow, the last 2 days of April, aka my birthday month. I'm 55 now, so
right on.
It would be great. Thank you. It would be great if I sold 55 copies between today and tomorrow. But short of that, if you haven't purchased The Sound of Settling yet, please do. You can get it at TaraDublinRocks.com, but you can also now get it at Powell's bookstore in Portland, Oregon. You can get it at Powell's.com. Yesterday after brunch, a couple of my friends and I went to Powell's to visit my book, and it's really nice. And it's just sitting there. It's just sitting there on the shelf in the small press room in the blue room on the small press shelves. And we were like, we were really loud. We were like, look, local author who will sign her book, and it's a really good book. And no one fell for it. But I will always try, and still trying to get the book deal and the proper publishing deal, because there's a sequel and I'm working on adapting it to a streaming series. So I need an agent. I got another shitty AI form agent rejection last week where it was like, Dear Tara was in one font. The body was in another font that had no personalization whatsoever.
Right.
Thank you for sharing your work with me.
Mm-hmm.
Which I just sent her a query letter. I didn't even send anything I've written, just the letter. And and then so it was Dear Tara. It was like, Dear Tara, body in another font, and then her signature, totally different font. So it was like, it was just awful. It's just awful. So please, it's all word of mouth is all I have. And
I know it well.
Please, yes. The Sound of Settling,
Sound of Settling, and you can get it on Amazon. TaraDublinRocks.com is the site that will take you directly to it. And it's by the way, Sexy Liberal is on the 7th. It's the day after. So
on
Friday
the 7th.
night.
Okay, great.
Friday night.
Well, I'm going to put it.
Will be Dante's. Saturday will be the Sexy Liberal show. Yeah.
Excellent. That sounds excellent. We'll have a wonderful weekend.
I don't know. Schnitzer Concert Hall.
At the Schnitz.
With Tom Hartman and Rachel Bythofer as guests.
Ooh, I'm available to be a guest too. I'm just saying.
I know. I'm pitching
That's consider that my official. Hey, Stephanie Miller.
Yeah.
Hi, John Fugel saying I want to meet Frangela. Or Frangela will be there, right?
Oh yes, of
I love
course.
I love
Yeah, yeah. It's
Frangela,
a good time.
and so everybody. And I would definitely want to meet Rachel.
Hmm.
And hang out with you again. So make magic happen.
Oh yeah, it'll be a
It's gonna
long
be so
weekend.
fun. It's gonna be
That's
so
my birthday
so fun.
month. So yeah, good times to be had by all. So
Yes, fuck
awesome.
yes.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. See you
Have a
again.
great week,
Tara
everybody.
Dublin rocks, everybody. There she goes. Yay! All right, and thank you guys for sticking around. I know I went a little bit long, and I will see you later this afternoon for the regular afternoon show, Mega Worldwide. And now I'm going to go pass out because last night I was doing shows till I was supposed to be done early enough to maybe even catch an earlier flight, but that boy did I not make it. That was just not going to happen at all. And here I'll show you a picture real quick, if I may. This is, dun, dun, dun. Where is it? I posted it in here. It should be in this thingy. Yeah, here we are. I'm not gonna show the entire picture, but you're gonna have to trust me on this. So this is this. Whoops, hold on. I'm very popular. It's Gilby Clark, Rudy Sarzo, Dweezil Zappa, Doug Aldridge, me, and Caleb at Phil X's gathering. That was a party, and then here's Doug Pinnick and Phil on stage doing "Fire" by Jimi Hendrix. So it was a good time, hang out. Yes, and Tony Michaels will be on the show tonight as a special guest to explain his censorship by the deep state, something like that. And yes, Phil X is not only awesome, but he's a lovely human being. Just saying for the record. Super talented, really nice guy, and insofar as I know, has never hung out with the kidney.
The kidney has a very special place in the heart.
Mm.
Heard that Saudi Arabia and Russia will repeat your. Our army manned the air. It ran the ramparts. It took over the airports. It did everything it had to do. Asshole. PP2. He can do things with his tongue you wouldn't believe. Purge the anti-Semitism and pro-terrorism. What you're doing? We're going to be a country no more. I actually think it will not. It will be a country no more. Here I am like an idiot.